All right. Shalom, everybody. Welcome. Doing a special as we're on the road. I'm not sure how long this will be, how long we'll be doing this, how long it's going to last. This might be real short, might be 20, 30 minutes. Max, we'll see what happens in this. May the words of my mouth and the meditation of my heart be acceptable in God's sight. He is our strength and our redeemer, and in his name, which is his authority, that we pray, praise, proclaim, project, and protect this message. Amen. Hello, amen. Hello, how's everybody doing? Hopefully all is well with you. Taking a little bit of time. We'll see how far this goes. I might be on here for a long time, a little bit of time, whenever we're doing a little bit of makeup, so to speak, just because of schedule being all over the place. Prayerfully will be in place to where after I do the rising session tomorrow, for the first time in a while, I'll have more than a day of being able to be in the same place for the first time in a little while, and we'll be able to I'll be able to rest, kind of make some calls, but rest, kind of do some updates, but rest. And then starting Friday, kind of get back on track with some things. Thank you guys for your patience once again and your prayers and hanging in there. Got a lot of people popping up on the evening session. Hopefully you guys will stay around a little longer. Nevertheless, thank you all for being on with us. Appreciate you guys. Appreciate you. We give all praise to the Most High. Give praise to him for my wife, the Honorable Maya, who lives a life to be able to be honored. You can follow her at Bloom and Flourish, not A-N-D, but the letter N, Bloom and Flourish, on TikTok, YouTube, and her website, as well as Pinterest. She's a healer. She's a chemist. She's a biologist by degree. She's a healer. I feel like I'm forgetting something. She got so many different things that she does. She makes tinctures, and she helps people out in the community. The tincture for the month is I Am Immune. But there's many different tinctures that she has, natural medicine, all types of stuff. So we're thankful and grateful. And shalom to everybody in the chat. Shalom, Sharice, how you doing? So we're going to get into this tonight. We're going to talk a little bit about Greco-Roman stuff, because we keep talking about culture. And as you guys saw in this rising, there's so many different places, and really yesterday rising too, even though we kind of bounced in and out of stuff because we were doing the coat drive. But you can see a lot of stuff that's happening. Shalom, Denise, how you doing? Just coming off of culture. Hopefully you guys are starting to catch it more and more. Right. I keep saying this, but it becomes more apparent as much as I teach this, preach this, proclaim this, think about this all day, every day. Make sure we talk about this every single rising session. Make sure that we are very intense even in speaking on how everything flows around culture. We just keep seeing more and more examples of it every time we get into any discussion. Right. Any kind of discussion anybody wants to talk about, first things first. Hey, what culture are we talking about? What's the perspective we're coming from? How does this affect our brothers? How does this affect our sisters? Who made this up? Who wrote this? Right? All this stuff people want you to just assume and just agree with somebody's stuff culturally, and they don't want to talk about the fact that it's I can accept or reject that culture. And so, as you noticed, we've been talking a lot about Greco-Roman stuff. And one of the reasons why we got to this, hey, shalom, Shima, how you doing? And shalom to anybody's family and friends that might be listening into. So when we were talking about this, I was speaking with my wife as we've been traveling a lot. And, it becomes very apparent that, people think that people talk about culture. So what people do, and this is a trick of the enemy, you got to be careful with this, because sometimes something that seems to be on your side or whatever, you'll put aside logic for a little bit just to make sure that stuff adds up the way that you want it to. We do this thing where we'll say that we'll use the term white people or Americans, and we'll say that they have no culture. The problem with this is that if you say that they have no culture and you won't even treat somebody as if they have a culture, what's going to happen is that you're actually going to allow people to get away with stuff, and you're going to allow a lot of stuff to be taught that's not of any value to you, because you really honestly truly believe that there's no culture, right? That somebody was walking around here not affected by anything. Everything comes from something, even if it's perverted. Shalom, how you doing, Anubis? Even if somebody perverts the culture or misappropriates somebody's culture, you're dealing in culture, period, right? People might not like it. People might not want to discuss it, but real talk, you are dealing in culture every day, right? Every single day, every single moment, every single second, you're dealing in somebody's culture. Whether you want to just be honest, whether you want to deal with it or not, you're dealing, something came from somewhere. And you can't talk about the United States of America without talking about Rome. You can't talk about the United States of America without talking about Greece. You cannot talk about the United States of America without talking about the Roman Catholic Church, right? You cannot talk about these places, right? You cannot talk about America without talking about Persia. You cannot talk about the United States of America without talking about Babylon. You cannot talk about the United States of America without talking about Assyria. And you definitely cannot talk about the United States of America without talking about Kemet. That's why you got a big old obelisk in the center of Washington, D.C. You can't do it, right? There's a bunch of different cultures, sure, right? And there's a bunch of different ways we can look at it, but we can't have an honest conversation about the United States of America. You can't have an honest conversation about England. You can't have an honest conversation about Spain. You can't have an honest conversation without mentioning those people, right? You can't have an honest conversation without mentioning the Moors, without mentioning the Carthaginians. I was just looking at, doing some research while driving, so I guess, listening to things, but still research nonetheless, on Septimius Severus. A lot of you might not even know that name. That's a brother you need to know about. That's part of your culture. That's a Carthaginian who is a Punic or a Phoenician or a Phoenician, which means that he is Canav, or a Canaanite, which means that he's mixed with Israelite blood. That's your people. Being in rulership, by the way. But we don't think about them as such because we only think of the Torah or the guide as being something that has to fit in a neat little box in 66 books, and not realizing that you can't talk about the story of mankind without talking about the guide, something that's guiding us, a culture, a people, a belief system, even historical context. So if you don't know what I'm talking about, Septimius Severus, right, who I've known about for, 10 years or so probably, so I haven't known about him my whole life, but he's a great person to read up on. And that's an African brother, born in Libya, born a Carthaginian, right? Same color as Hannibal and Hannibal's father. And he is the first, at least so we're told, he is the first African emperor of Rome. Now, how many people might not even know, that Rome had an African emperor or had multiple African emperors, because his children would be on the throne too. So no matter how long or short they were on there, they would count as well, right? But so we're not even aware of stuff like that. But you're dealing with culture, and you got to deal with the fact that he was a threat when he was put on the throne. Now, watch this. A typical Roman. I want you to think about, now, I'm not a Republican or Democrat, and Obama was on some mess just like all presidents are on some mess, right? Don't get it twisted. I'm not sitting here trying to say we need to caper for the Democrat Party, or for Obama or whoever, right? However, let's keep this 100. Let's keep this gangster. Let's keep this Gucci, so to speak, right? Let's get into some things. Hey, shalom, Minister Tamara, how you doing? I see you on there. Let's get into some stuff. Y'all ready? Check this out. Septimius Severus, I want you to think this is all the same thing playing itself out over and over again. Same thing. Septimius Severus is a guy who's Carthaginian, black man. And what happened was the 18th Legion, I believe he was over, the 14th Legion, one of those, he had authority over. And they, just like used to happen in ancient times, it was the army who followed him that made him powerful. The army called him Imperator, which is where we get this term emperor from, right? So when you hear emperor, it's Imperator. That's how Caesar got his power, or any of them when they did their triumphs that we've been talking about, right? When you see these people do those things, you have to comprehend and recognize. When you see them doing their triumphs, when you see them making these moves, when you see them, having these huge parades and everything, you have to say to yourself, you have to think to yourself, you have to be honest with yourself and say, that this was all led by the army. The army gives them the power to where everybody kind of has to say, all right, cool, this person's got the power. We don't want this person's army who's following this person to go ahead and go down. Like, that's how Octavius Caesar, Julius Caesar's son, that's how he got to sit on the throne. Because he got to sit on the throne because basically, like, the army came up to the Senate and was like, yo, he gonna have power or else we're gonna stab you. Like basically, like that's basically what he said. He pulled out his sword. He said, hey, either Octavius Caesar go sit on the throne, or either you gonna put him on the throne, or this is gonna put him on the throne. He unsheathed his sword a little bit to let him know, like, we ride with Octavius, right? We ride with Caesar Jr., the second Caesar, the Caesarian, right? Like we talked about, was it yesterday? That C-section thing, right? We ride with Caesarian. So you had Septimius Severus, a black general who considered to be a Roman, who was considered to be a Roman by, by his basically being faithful to the army and everything. And he got in a position where his legion started calling him Imperator, which means he's emperor. And so when he came into this place of being emperor, he went around and he squashed a bunch of beef that was going around Rome, where people were trying to come in and mess with them, and even some civil war stuff. And so basically he ruled after that for a while. I want to say 15, 20 years. I could be wrong. I believe it's like 15, 20 years though that he ruled, somewhere in there. And so he was the emperor of Rome. Now, people were afraid of him the whole time and would actually kill his children because they were afraid to have him on the throne, because he was a Carthaginian. And if you know the story of Carthaginians and Romans, they didn't get along together, right? And Carthaginians used to have more power than Rome. And right, they used to have power all the way through North Africa, all the way over to going into Spain and parts of Europe. And Rome was just trying to get started. So, that's where things went, right? You said, why are we the Israelites? You asked that question again, I think, right? The second time I think I saw you on there. I apologize. I'm trying to talk about something else, but I'm not forgetting about you. Why are we the Israelites? I mean, well, because the Bible says so, because history says so. I mean, there's a whole lot of different things we can discuss, which I don't know if we'd be able to discuss a fraction of them. That's why we come on every day at 8 a.m. Eastern New York time, and as many evenings as possible, Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday, usually at 8 o'clock p.m. Eastern New York time. Today I'm doing a makeup session, but long story short, why are we the Israelites, right? Well, first of all, you got to know where you come from. You're not guaranteed to be an Israelite just because you're black. How do you know if you're an Israelite? Well, you start checking out your family, where your family comes from. If you are from West Africa, especially Nigeria, or we're talking about, even if we get into, it's not really West Africa, but nonetheless, if we talk about Bantu people, if we talk about Igbo people, if we talk about Ashanti, if we talk about Shwi, if we talk about Ashanti Shwi, even people up from Mali, the original Ghanaians, not the country, but the actual tribe, going all the way up into Morocco, different places like that. If we're talking about Sudanese people, South Sudanese people, Ethiopian people, especially people that would consider themselves Israelites to this day, attached to Sheba, Queen Sheba, places like that. If you're attached to any of that, Israel itself, where they were mixed with Carthaginians, they were mixed with Kemet, they were mixed with Cush, they were mixed with Hittites, they were mixed with there's somebody I'm missing. Well, West Africans, but there's somebody else. People from around the land of Goshen. Look at Rebecca's tribe. There's a lot of different people that you're talking about being mixed with, right? Being an Israelite is not. And by the way, being a Hebrew is even more people that we're involved with, right? Israel is just one branching away from Ibra or the Hebrew people, or the Avda people was the original term. But long story short, if you look at where those people went and you look at the books that were kept on them, Jews actually tell you that they enslaved Hebrews, Israelites. Jews didn't consider themselves to be chosen and didn't even push that narrative until you get to, the 1900s. Then all of a sudden they're the chosen people out of nowhere when the Rothschild family is trying to get France, the United States of America, Russia, and England to give them land that now is called modern Israel. It's not even necessarily 100% in the same place as the ancient Israel, by the way. So there's a lot of different things that we can talk about. We can talk about the fact that natives over here actually, or Taino people and natives over here, when Christopher Columbus comes over, he has to bring an Israelite interpreter, a Hebrew interpreter, right, to be able to speak Hebrew. And that's the only way they can speak, because they speak enough of the same language. And when they speak the same language, we get to a place of where there's comprehension, and they start talking about West Africans who have been coming over here and mixing with the people, and how they make the same weapons, eat the same type of food, everything like that. So historically speaking, which I don't like always to go to his story, but even if we look at his story, our story, the story, whichever. If we look at even things like Oluwadah Equiano, which is a gentleman who wrote a whole autobiography on his life, was a former Igbo prince. Might have even been from Sierra Leone, but I feel like he was an Igbo prince. Had never read the Bible, was captured as a young boy, buys his freedom at about age 20, lives a little while, gets a Bible because everybody keeps telling him, read it. Everybody tells him, go read this Bible, go read this book. Next thing you know, he reads the Bible. He says, wow, you know what? All the people of this culture, all the people of these lands, all the people who are over here that the Bible's talking about, they keep the same customs that we did as a child. He started remembering, like, yeah, as a child, we did do this and we did that. And then he was like, wait a minute, I remember this stuff. And he says, I'm an Israelite, I'm a Hebrew. He says it, right? Like, there's tons of people who point towards the skin color. Once again, there's Jewish records that we have of people who were called Israelites that were enslaved by them and sold. We know that once 1865 happens in the United States of America, and freedmen begin to build their own churches. What do they start writing, carving into the walls of their churches? They start carving Paleo Hebrew, because it's a culture that was brought over. You said, have I read every book? I certainly have not. Nor would I ever pretend to, right? Hopefully I'll continue to find books and excerpts and things to hear and people to listen to and classes to sit in for the rest of my life. I definitely have not, but I've read enough, and I come from enough. I have enough people in my family to where I'm very learned about who I am. And so I'm definitely aware of that for sure. Hello, how you doing, Brother TJ? Let's see. Y'all ain't tired yet? Hey, how you doing? Shalom. So yeah, but anyways, getting back to the whole Greco-Roman thing. When you're looking at the Greco-Roman stuff, you have to realize all the stuff we're doing is still Greco-Roman. You're dealing with somebody else's culture, right? Even the Senate, democracy, things like that. Oh, I won't allow you to give the gift. I'm sorry, Mama. I don't know what's going on with that. They be doing some trifling stuff up here on TikTok. But thank you for wanting to give it, and hope that you're healing and continuing to do well. Praying for you. At some point, we need to make sure that we get on track with each other. Shoot, maybe even break some bread at some point. Now we'll be on the road this much. It'd be crazy for me to be on the road and not to get a chance to stop by. We're going to have to make that happen someday. Yeah, all these things that are going on, we're not thinking about. We're not thinking about these items. We're not thinking about like how much of other people's culture we take on. Even when, and I'm not mad at the person for this question. I just want to say, like, even the question that's given, it shows how little we know about self. And remember, therefore we can't have self-control. If you don't have a sense of self and you take away yourself, all that's left is control. If you have self-control, you're dangerous because you're sovereign, right? You're a king, you're a queen. They don't want you to be your own royalty, right? To be a royal priesthood, to be a holy nation, to be a peculiar people you don't fit in, right? To be a chosen generation, to make sure that we teach others and come out of this stuff. So we carry on other people's culture. Think about the Greco-Roman culture, like we're talking about. Think about the fact that, people are not aware that what a parade is. Hey, shalom, Brother Clem. Like, think about that. How many people are not even aware of what a parade is? When you go to a parade, first of all, like, what is one of the biggest things of a parade? A parade goes in like 3 phases, by the way. Purposefully. It goes in 3 phases. And the first phase is what? Propaganda. Right? First phase is propaganda. How you doing, Don? Thanks for being on. First phase of any parade is propaganda. Every parade that you've ever went to, you thought that, it's just this, that, or whatever. Do you know the reason why they make sure that everybody looks towards, like on the Macy's parade? I haven't seen it in years now, but the Macy's parade, you're always looking for Snoopy or something like that. You're always looking for Charlie Brown. You're always looking for something. You're looking for a Looney Tunes thing or whatever, Tweety Bird. You're always looking for certain things. You know why? Because it's supposed to make you feel like stuff is different than what it actually is. It's propaganda. Right? It's straight propaganda. It's straight propaganda. Like, that's the first phase. Hey, how you doing, Kathy? That's the first phase of everything that's going to happen and everything that's going on is propaganda. right? To get you to believe in something else. So Thanksgiving is supposed to be, first of all, even if you're going to take the original version of Thanksgiving, or what it's supposed to be, Thanksgiving before it even became something. I'm sorry, I guess I got to turn on the stuff in the car. So Thanksgiving originally is supposed to be what? Thanksgiving initially and originally, whenever you saw Thanksgiving, the time of Thanksgiving, Thanksgiving was always supposed to be, what is it I'm trying to say? Thanksgiving was always supposed to be fasting, right? But when you watch the parade, it's a float to take you off of anything but fasting, right? Number one. Number two, Thanksgiving, the time that they try to talk about Thanksgiving and first stuff like that, Squanto was a former slave. He ended up having a Sambo spirit because of being enslaved in two different countries by two terrible masters. He tried to sell his people out. The people who came there, the natives, right? Some people would even say the Moors, but the natives who were there, they came and they actually brought food and stuff with them, venison and things, not like turkey and all that stuff that you see. That's not even anything they would have had. They brought deer, possibly, of course, some vegetation and stuff, but they would have brought deer and things to make sure that they fed. And they brought no women with them, no women, no children. All they brought were their soldiers. All they brought were their warriors. That's all they brought with them, right? To make sure that if something went down, because they didn't trust these people, that if they needed to, they could wipe them out right then and there. Right? Had they known what they know now, they probably would have. I'm not even advocating for it. I'm just telling you, and think about common sense. If they knew they would get wiped out, they probably would have just wiped them out. Nevertheless, that's what happened, right? Thank you, Shelley. Appreciate that. You said the Germans mastered propaganda. Yeah, a lot of people mastered propaganda. If we're not careful, we can give up propaganda. That's why we got to make sure that we're in truth. Because a lot of people will just give only one perspective and won't be honest about it. Like, we want to be holistic in everything. We're going to give everything from a certain perspective, but we're not going to deny there's other perspectives either. Right? That's when propaganda really starts to happen. When you deny any other perspective, when you can't even see or empathize, that means that you don't have an ability to tell truth. Because how can you even see if there's a such thing as sin? The word sin literally means just to miss the mark, right? And law is there to make sure to protect you from consequences of missing the mark. So if you don't think that you could ever miss the mark, which is to sin, then you don't ever think that there's anything lawful for you to do. And that means you don't believe in not only kingdom law, but marital law, universal law, natural law, laws of attraction, law of first mention, common law, law of equity, admiralty law, maritime law. Like, you don't know how to decipher through a lot of life if you don't know about law. Law protects your rights. Law never gives you rights. You have unalienable rights, but law what protects rights. So a lot of things we're doing in Greco-Roman, where propaganda is taking away your ability to see clearly, which means that not only can you not decipher law, but you can't even do case study. Right? A lot of us are not even in the position where we can do case study. Hey, babe. My wife, the Honorable Maya, is on Bloom and Flourish, not A-N-D, but the letter N. Check her out on TikTok, YouTube, her website, and Pinterest. Thanks, babe. Love you so much. Thank you for being on. Right? So we have to be in that position of comprehending. So, even certain things like that, like a parade is nothing more than propaganda. First part of a parade, all these parades that happen and all these things that I remember stopping every year, like certain times a year, you needed to see the Christmas Day parade. Even though we didn't celebrate Christmas, we still watched the Christmas Day parade. Go figure. And, Thanksgiving parade was something that we had to look at and all this stuff. And it's like, you look at it and it's all propaganda. Being in the military, I marched in quite a few parades, even marched and played music in some parades. I've done parades New Orleans style and New Orleans style, and all that. And I can tell you, it's propaganda. All the stuff that you see in the singing, the dancing, and all that stuff is propaganda. This is what it's really about. Nobody gonna tell you this is what's actually going on, right? You said our military is a big propaganda machine that throws a lot of parades. Yeah, most definitely. That the military works for somebody too. Right? And that's the Greco-Roman idea, right? Like, you got to understand the parade can't go down. Ancient times, back in Roman times, parade can't go down, right? So the triumph, a parade is a triumph. We talked about that before. Like, there's even something called the triumvirate. The triumvirate were a group of three people that came together, T-R-I, right? The original triumvirate was Caesar, Oh wow, I'm forgetting the other two guys' name. It was Caesar and two other cats that he helped to put on, to be in the two seats that they had. They kind of ran their stuff like the Spartans did, where you're supposed to have two kings. And it was so Caesar, and then he stepped down from being the consul, I believe. The consul. And he stepped down from there and put two people in place or whatever. And they had this, basically three people that worked together. Mark Antony wasn't there. No, Mark Antony became basically like under Caesar. Mark Antony became a consul, but he wasn't really part of the triumvirate. He came later after the triumvirate fell apart and Caesar had the original Caesar. Octavius Caesar was part of a second triumvirate, but it was with two other people completely. Remember, Octavius Caesar really doesn't do anything as far as power or the Senate or anything like that until you start getting into after Caesar has died. Octavius Caesar gets Julius Caesar's money. Octavius Caesar was Julius Caesar's son, but he was the son. But he gets Julius Caesar's money after, in a surprise. People, because Julius Caesar had children. Julius Caesar had a wife. His wife was taken care of, but everybody was waiting for somebody. Matter of fact, some people thought Mark Antony was going to get Julius Caesar's, his fortune, basically, like his estate, and he gave it to Octavius. So Octavius came on later. Hey, how you doing? All praises to the Most High, y'all. I never said I stood in a change of command that lasts close to 3 hours. The heat of Camp Lejeune. Yeah, that used to irritate me. I did a lot of change of command ceremonies, and that used to irritate me a lot when we would go somewhere. And it showed the lack of respect usually that a CO had for their troops. All the stuff, Greco-Roman mentality. If a CO goes out, it doesn't make sure, like the reason now things have changed up, so they don't even do it as effective as they used to do in ancient times, even though it was not necessarily the greatest of things and the greatest of values that they upheld back then in the way that they treated people and stuff, right? But back then, at least, the general understood that the troops needed to be taken care of. It was the troops that were going to give him the power, and eventually it started becoming the troops made emperors. If the troops like you, then they called you imperator. If they called you imperator, that meant that you were going to be Caesar. You were going to be emperor. So they understood they had to take care of the troops. Julius Caesar legit just made sure that he was taking care of his troops all day, every day. All day, every day. That's what he was doing. And when he went to fight somewhere or whatever, and he got some money in his hand, he filled up his pockets, but he made sure his troops had to be taken care of. And when they tried to take his power away, he'd say, okay, no problem. He'd give his troops money on the way out. And you know what his troops did? They supported him because he took care of them, right? We can learn some lessons from that. If people who are in leadership positions comprehended they need to take care of the people who come into the environments that they have, then people would take care of them back. And we would take care of each other, right? But nevertheless, like when you get to the parade, your soldiers had to put you in that position. And remember, we were talking about that word. People say, why don't we use the word church and stuff? And I was telling you it was closer to circus or circus. It's a game. It's a plan and all that. Well, these vias, VIA, you know how you say, we're going to have a meeting via email or something. Well, via is basically just an old way of saying road. I'm not sure if it's a Latin term, but it's just an old way of saying road, right? So when you say via this, you're saying we're going to go down this road, we're going to go down this path. And so and when they went down these vias led them to what's called circuses, right? Or even they would go through a circus, whatever, but these usually circuses were the place that they would show. Like they had a Circus Maximus and a circus this, circus that, and that was where they would put on a show. Yeah, like a viaduct or a viaduct, right? Same thing. So like when we say we're going to do something via this, whatever, that's what we're speaking on, right? And so even when you're talking about that, you're talking about somebody else's culture. You're talking about going down a Roman road, so to speak, right? Via, right? And even when you're talking about virtue, terms that we use, like the virtuous woman, that's why, of course, the virtuous woman is important, but they wouldn't have called the virtuous woman. That's Greco-Roman. Greco-Roman virtue or virtus literally means how you represent something. So if you were a child, your virtus, your virtue was based off of how you represented your mother and your father. If you were a mother, your virtus was how did you represent your husband. If you were a father, your virtue or your virtus was how did you represent whatever God you worshipped or gods you worshipped. That's how it went, right? And then those gods had Virtus, but basically their Virtus was, how do they represent Zeus, Olympius, and then how do they represent themselves, right? But that's what virtue or Virtus was, right? So the whole parade was nothing but Virtus. It was virtue. It was them representing something, and once again, it was propaganda based. They were pushing, oh yeah, we went here, and this is how the war went down. They have 3D models that they made up and everything. I mean, took a long time to do a triumph, but and they did it once, like on average, once every 3 or 4 years. And people would take time out to carve out these 3D models. They'd make these huge woven tapestries that were like bigger than buildings and stuff. And they would have it to where people could see what happened in war. They would march prisoners. They would keep political prisoners. So one of the reasons why they kept prisoners alive back then wasn't so that they would have power over them. Back then in Rome, they kept political prisoners alive because they wanted all of Rome to see these prisoners marched in front of them. And they usually put them in their best regalia, right? Or they try to put them in their best outfit. And that's how they roll. Did you say should I have learned so much from you in the last few weeks than I have in the last few years? Oh, well, praise Yah. Thank you. Right? And so they would literally, pass and review, stuff like that, right? And so they would have this procession going on. That was the first phase, which is nothing but propaganda. We're going to retell the story. And is that not what happens today? Right? We put out a parade in front of you guys. We put out all this information. We show you in high school. We show you in junior high school. We show you in elementary school. We show you in preschool. We have your parents have you watch videos that seem to be cute and everything. And the videos are set up to get you to believe something that's not true, to take you away from the ugly truth. Oh, how you doing, Tiger? Thanks for being on, right? So we're going to do that. That's propaganda. That's the first phase out of 3. First phase is what? We got to get you to get out of source. We got to get you to stop. Don't pay attention to that man behind the curtain. Right? That's the first phase. Don't pay attention to the man behind the curtain. Right? Don't pay attention to that. Focus on the via. We're going via somewhere else. The yellow brick road. This is full.
That's full. Okay.
I just filled it up before you went in.
Okay.
Okay. But yeah, so that's what we're dealing with is we're trying to ensure that these things are in place. These things are in proper position as far as propaganda in the first part. Right, Salah. Pause and think about it, right? Then after that, you're going to bring forth the well, and in the first part too, in the first part while they're doing all this stuff, don't forget whoever the triumphator or the person who's getting the triumph, who won, they're coming back in and they're going to be dressed up in everything. They get to dress up in purple, which was a big deal back then because they couldn't really afford, or not even afford, they couldn't really figure out how to dye stuff purple where they were. So purple was a big deal. They usually only got to wear like a strip of purple, maybe like this on their outfit. But now they were actually dressed up in full purple for the day. They normally weren't allowed to because purple was supposed to be about monarchy. And even though these people were in essence over everybody else and were basically family monarchs, even though that's what was going on, they still didn't really get to represent that way. I'm gonna try and is the lights already for you? Okay. So they had all those things going on, all these things as far as monarchs going on, this, that, etc. Let me go to the light. You're gonna make it right. Okay. You should be going straight for a little while. So when we talk about these things, we have to be in position. We have to recognize what's going on, and we have to think about what's being played in there, right? Then after that, they're gonna march the prisoners and stuff through. Now, make sure you remember the prisoners and all that. And they've had animals and stuff too. So they're bringing animals from different places and all that stuff. It's a whole huge scene. We're taking your mind off the fact that, hey, like probably during all this time war's been going on, you probably haven't had money. as a people, right? But we're going to go ahead and keep you disconnected from that. We're going to go ahead and keep you disconnected from the fact that you don't have money together. We're going to keep you disconnected from the fact that you don't have certain items and things together. We're going to keep you disconnected and off track. We don't want you to think about any of those things. We don't want you to believe in any of those things. We want you to look up any of those things. Just keep your mind on what the animals. See the elephants, see the antelope, see the lion, see the tiger, see different things that you don't normally get to see. Don't focus on what's really going on, that you're dealing with poverty, right? And all these different things. Yeah, you got children and stuff too, right? You had so don't pick, just look at this and see how we took over everything and everybody. Pay attention to that. See how we took over everything and everybody, and how we have power and stuff like that, and how we can march, monarchs and emperors and stuff from other places, chieftains and stuff. See, that's the power that we uphold. They held everything like that there to ensure that everybody could say, this, see, we have the power, right? And so now then they have the army come behind them, and the army, who's been gone for years and years, they basically get to wild out and say all types of wild, disgusting things and everything like that, and everybody's having a great time. Now you get to the place to where you get to the basically Jupiter's temple, if you will. And what they would do is, even though Romans said that they didn't believe in human sacrifice, the reality is that basically they would take all of their prisoners of war, and they take these prisoners of war and they would bring them to a place, to the temple, and then they would literally have soldiers choke the prisoners of war to death. These people that were in charge of other countries and stuff, have them choked to death, not stabbed, but choked. So in front of everybody would cheer this, and then they would go and they would take two, I believe they said it's white bulls, and they would do a sacrifice in the temple. This is straight up human sacrifice. Now, and all that stuff going on, right? All that's done, people thirsty for blood to see this stuff going on, etc. And then they're going to keep celebrating it for all this time. Keep your mind off of what? The problems, the issues, all this stuff. If we can kill off some people, right? We already defeated them. We already own their stuff anyways, right? That's the elaborate rouge, so to speak. That's the thing that we're not even going to, people aren't even being aware of. They're not even cognitive of, is that we already have power over these people anyways, right? We've already, when Vercingetorix, if you know about the Gauls, when Vercingetorix is finally brought in front of people in the triumph, Vercingetorix had been in prison for 6 years. So you already had control of the Gauls. You had already defeated him. You already made him look bad, but you were only keeping him alive long enough so that people would be able to see in person this and have this display of power, and say that we have the power to literally mess people up and to kill people off, and people were going to rejoice in this and forget about all the issues that Rome was actually still going through. Forget about the fact that Julius Caesar at the time still had a bunch of stuff he needed to pay off. Right now, think about what happens today, though. Right, every time somebody needs to get us to start being against each other, what happens? They're going to reach back to something that they already conquered anyways. They're going back to Trayvon Martin. We got to bring him up. Like, Trayvon been in the grave, and I'm not saying we shouldn't fight for him or talk about him or bring him up, but he's been in the grave. At this point, George Zimmerman been out here. Matter of fact, George Zimmerman been shooting at other people, right, and getting in trouble, getting in fights, and almost died because somebody shot him up because he was shooting at people wild and stuff, and he keeps signing Skittles bags. But what they're going to do, they're going to go right back to somebody who's already conquered and bring him out in front of you again, because that's how the Senate has always operated. Now, we're thinking, once again, because we're only thinking about modern times and not thinking about this being a continuation, just like we talk about in the Rising Sessions. Revelation is not off by itself. It's a continued story. Well, same thing. You okay, Saddam? You need some water? Probably. Oh. So, so you got, what was I saying? Oh yeah, just like Revelation's not a one-off. America's power is not a one-off like we've been talking about. America is connected to all of these powers. It's one consistent world power, right? One consistent group of people that haven't let go of power and are utilizing this power. And we're thinking that this is just a country just by itself. It's a one-off. No, the United States of America is a continuation of the same mess. It's a continuation of the same spirit, and that's what you got to get to. It's the same spirit. It's not a new thing. It's not a one-off, right? Are women being disrespected? That's not a new thing. Like, you got to understand that, right? It's a very Greco-Roman thing. Why? Because you're living by somebody else's culture. And get this, in Greco-Roman culture, even their own women get disrespected, because in Greco-Roman culture, you can be a husband with a wife, and the way they do their gender, they still mess around with men and little children while being married and having children to sit on the throne, and these children they won't even raise. Now, they'll talk about black people not raising their children, but percentage-wise, black men are more involved in the lives of their children in the United States of America than any other race, which means that white men are still out here doing the Greco-Roman thing of having all these different relationships, not being involved in the children's lives, paying some child support and stuff like that. But in this society, you don't consider them to do that, right? To be that. However, whenever we need, once again, to talk about something that gets us off track, what's the first thing they're going to bring up? They're going to bring up something old. They've already conquered the group of people, and they have us conquered mentally, thinking that we're not who we are. And so all they got to do is say, see, don't worry about us. Before you start talking about politics, make sure you get your people right. You guys aren't taking care of your children. You guys aren't married, this and that or whatever. It's like, look at white people's divorce rate. Tell me what the difference is. Right? They got us so much. They have you, once again, the parade is there. It's nice, it's shiny. It's to get your mind off of what's actually going on. They got you going through all this stuff. Reality, though, is that it's not what you think it is. The parade is propaganda. The first third of the parade is what? It's supposed to be designed for propaganda, to get you to think about everything else except what's going on. I'm sorry, daughter Zion. You said, so you're saying they use... This is a fear thing. I mean, yeah, it could be fear. It could be fear. It could be, Emmett Till movie coming out. Yeah, like they'll bring stuff like like how far we removed. Then they just come up with a Harriet movie and a Nat Turner movie and all these different things, right? Like they had all those things together. They had those things for a reason. Those things were done for a reason. Right? They bring those things out every once in a while, right? Where we're not even thinking about it. Look, love Sister Harriet Tubman, love what she did, but I'd never gone, and I can't say never, but I've never thought once to myself I need to go see the movie. Matter of fact, the movie's a lie because it's not going to tell you everything she did anyways. It's going to be in Hollywood. They don't tell you everything that happened anyways. So why not read the truth? The truth is oftentimes way better than the fable. But they're going to bring that out every once in a while. They just had, you remember how long they were talking about Harriet Tubman was going to be on the $20 bill? So they finally gave us, they still won't give you Harriet Tubman. She's too strong a figure for black folk to put on anything. So they still haven't given you the Harriet Tubman 20s that they were talking about. And remember on TikTok, people kept coming out with videos talking about, they finally got them. I still haven't seen mine. I don't know. But I know that, what did they just finally come out with a coin for Maya Angelou? And that's fine and everything, but the reality is, like, even though Maya Angelou was very strong for us, and I tell you a lot of times, like when I hear Maya Angelou speak to this day, it still like does something to me, because it's almost like your grandmother kind of talking to you, and she speaks, especially even to men. She'll tell you the truth, but at the same time, she'll speak to you like, with a kind heart, a kind soul, an empathetic soul, says a forgiving spirit, and the stuff that she went through to get to where she is powerful within itself. But okay, they gave you a Maya Angelou coin. How many of them are they going to have? And they still have a bunch of slave owners on money. Are they really concerned about changing anything, or they just finally gave you a black person on the coin, if you don't count Lincoln, right? Or I guess what, Eisenhower too. My fault. Eisenhower's on the dime, right? So they finally get you somebody that you can see yourself in, so to speak. But they do that every once in a while. The promise. Joe Biden was running for president. What did he promise? Reparations. When Donald Trump was running for president, he actually mentioned reparations too. If y'all don't remember, he slipped it in there just to be like, see, I care about what black people think. Joe Biden did the same thing, and people said, "Oh, they're doing, one's doing." No, both of them did it. And but what's funny? The president recently that didn't say anything about reparations was Barack Obama.
Mm-hmm.
You would have thought if anybody would have said something about it, would have been him. But that's not the plan. That's not how they have it planned out. If a black president had said something about reparations, that might get the ball rolling. People might start demanding it. People might start showing up in the streets. But Barack Obama was very careful when he was running. He told you, hey, I'm not going to be the white president. I'm not going to be the black president. I'm going to be the president. That was his way of saying, you're not on my agenda. That was his way of saying it. And we applauded it. It was a parade. It was a triumph. It was a circus. They literally, on the parade, you go down a circus and you go to Circus Maximus. You go to the big, huge circus that seats, 150,000 people. If it was still around today, they say, even though it's not true because there's bigger arenas than that. There's even a bigger one in North Korea, actually. But just off the top of my head. But they said that, if they brought back Circus Maximus, that would hold 150,000 people at the same time. To give you an example of that, if you know about sports, the Dallas Cowboys stadium, that's supposed to max out around 100,000 people in it at a time. So if they have an event and it can have 100,000 people in it, that's considered to be huge. Well, they had a thing back then that could house 150,000 people for one event, right? And it was all a circus. That's why we say, when you look up these terms, circus, church, the root word for church is talking about circus, and circus is pointing towards Roman deities that have nothing to do with the assembly, which is why they changed stuff from Shabbat to Sunday. So you can have sun worship on the day of the sun. Right, and the Roman Catholic Church told you that that's a Greco-Roman mentality. That's what's going on. All these things are Greco-Roman mentality. It's the same culture, and we're taking on somebody else's stuff. Hey, how you doing, Action? Thanks for being on. TJ said Obama lied in the speech to the original nations about respect and reparations. Oh, okay. I missed that one. I might need to go back and look for that. Said they're still trying to pick our leaders for us. Most definitely. I mean, they always did, right? They're just doing the same thing. You said, and I'm sorry, daughter says, and money is about to be diminished. It's all digital. That's why they did it, and we have to pay for it, right? And that's why you need to make sure you get your tax situation under control. Mark said, why should they been put on the coins? They should be on the dollar bill. But why would you put them on the dollar bill? George Washington's supposedly the father of your nation. Like, you got to think about the importance. In the United States of America, there's a lot of people who just are saving up coins. If you will, they get together, and some of them get together that represent the plebes, and they would vote, and all this stuff, and then the person gets to have the triumph. So they're planning this ass, if you will, they get together, and some of them get together that represent the plebes, and they would vote, and all this stuff, and then the person gets to have the triumph. So they're planning this stuff. That girl up to Kobe's room, and everybody started laughing because that was, when Kobe went through the case or whatever that he went through. But it's a reality. Like, a lot of stuff is put there in design. That's a Willie Lynch tactic. Willie Lynch said that people, when they get into mind, or when they come into contact with something that is tangible for them, and they can hold basically themselves, their culture in their hand, their mind will try to auto-correct itself over and over again. So he said once that happens, we have to introduce something else to them real quick to cause confusion that causes them to let go of what's tangible and try to say, well, I can't hold on to this tangible thing because it's not tangible unless it makes sense with all these other things. And that's done purposefully. That's done skillfully and willfully, right? So that's a very, we're still dealing in Greco-Roman times. If you're talking about the culture of the United States of America, you don't need to look past Greece. You don't need to look past Rome. If you want to look at what the president does, right? All you got to do is look at a consul in Rome and do some research. If you want to look up, if you want to look up what somebody does as far as God bless America and stuff like that, look up what I don't know if I'm saying this position right. I might be saying the wrong position, but I think it's the praetor, who is the person who's supposed to be over Rome in a religious fashion. If you want to know what a commander-in-chief does. Look up Julius Caesar. You'll find why people are trying their hardest to be like Julius Caesar. If you want to know what an executive order is and try to figure out what an executive order is, look up what happened in the Senate. If you want to learn about filibustering, look at filibustering in the Senate of Rome or of Greece. We think this is a brand new thing. And it's the same stuff over and over again. They haven't got you. They're not giving you anything new. They're not giving you anything new. It's the same thing. It's the same setup. It's the same people. The same belief system. You okay? It's the same people. It's the same belief system. We're the ones that keep thinking there's something different, completely different going on. Right? We're the ones that are thinking it's something completely different going. Oh, you lost signal? I'm sorry. I missed that altogether. I apologize if we lost signal. I didn't even notice. But yeah, we're the ones that are caught on this and thinking differently than what we're supposed to, and keep saying, oh yeah, America's changing for the different. America's not a one-off. Is America doing anything different than England did? Mm-hmm. Right? Like just keep it, once again, let's not make it so mystical that it's no longer practical. Let's keep this on a practical level. Is America doing anything different than England did? Right? Is America doing anything? Watch this. Is America or Louisiana or Haiti or whatever doing anything different than France did? The people who are doing those things to our people there, are they doing anything different than what was done by France? It's a continuation of the same thing. When the CIA came to Haiti, and when when the Clintons came to Haiti, are they doing anything different than what the people that others have done? Right? When you talk about Spanish situation in Florida, Floridian stuff that's going on, and Dominican things that are going on, and Cubano things that are going on, is that anything different than what the Spanish were doing? Is that anything different than what the Spanish did to the Moors? Heck, the Spanish dress in blackface to this day. Right? The Spanish have dishes like I forget what it's called, but basically it's called like little it's basically like rice and beans, but they call it like negro y blanco something.
In Switzerland, they have a candy called head of blacks, tête de nègre.
No, the head. You talking about head?
Yeah.
I thought they had the hands too. They just had the heads.
I don't know about the hands. I know that there was a thing. They have a candy called head of blacks.
Okay, so in Switzerland they have a candy called head of blacks, and it's just black heads. Some people even call it N-word heads.
They have chocolate. It's chocolate with marshmallow inside of it.
Right. And they eat them. Or just like there's places like in Belgium, by the way, because remember Belgium was over in the Republic of Congo, and they used to chop off the hands of black people and just send them back out, and they would keep their hands as trophies. So, and sometimes even send hands and heads and stuff like that of people back to the king. They have still to this day, if you go to Belgium, they have candy over there where it's I forget what it's called, but basically it's black hands, and so people literally eat black hands over there. Like, it's culture. It's the same stuff, the same people, right? It's horrific. It is. It's valuable though to know, because you need to know what your enemy is still doing, and if they're thinking like of you like that from back then, and they're thinking about you like that now. What is it? What's the bacon that they use? Or King Cotton down south. King Cotton was a big deal. King Cotton's still in a bunch of stores, by the way. Just not as big as it used to be, but there was King Cotton bacon. There was King Cotton clothes. There was King Cotton yogurt. There was King Cotton eggs, right? You said no Belgian chocolate for you. Yeah, but I mean, that's the hands. I don't know if they're doing it with the whole chocolate. I get what you say. If you want to go to that stance, though, be obedient to it. That's what you let to do. I get it. But King Cotton used to be something, still is something, so there are people that still buy King Cotton. I think they still have King Cotton bacon. I'm not sure, but people still buy King Cotton products to this day. And King Cotton, the only reason why, matter of fact, I used to play a march when I was in the band. I didn't know what it was, but it was called King Cotton. It was a march. And you would play the march. And King Cotton basically was them saying during the Civil War, and before the Civil War broke out in the United States of America, they had this idea that was like, hey, nobody will go against us because all the world gets its cotton from us. So if the world keeps getting its cotton from us, and we're giving it to them for cheap because we have slaves that do labor for free, then basically nobody will go against us, which nobody did, but nobody helped them either. So it ended up backfiring. They thought that everybody was going to come to their aid and go against the North. But really, a lot of people have been messed over by America so many times. Think about the French, who gave so much money. Matter of fact, the French who end up, going through their own revolutionary or revolution, which kept happening a bunch. The French had a bunch of revolutions back to back to back to back, actually. But when it started, the reason why they got mad at the king is because, and his queen, is because like everybody was starving, and the king and queen were like wilding out. But the reason they got poor, they were already having issues. But the reason why France lost all its money was because you had stuff that was happening with Haiti. But then also, one of the things that happened with them is that, what was I saying? Haiti. The French lost their money. They were mad at the king. Because the king had made sure that he helped out America. Benjamin Franklin learned French, something crazy, like in a month or two, something like that, taught himself French, goes over to France, and basically kind of the king, who's really not a great king, he kind of uses pride for the king to get the king to just pay a whole bunch of money for America to be able to fight, because America didn't have any money to fight their battle, against England. So when America didn't really have great generals and leadership, so America ends up losing. You all right?
Yeah, the can. I was like, oh, that was on the street.
So it's the same stuff, right? So the South, was like, okay, somebody's gonna help us, but people or England was like, we just fought y'all twice, and you were supposed to be part of us. You went against the crown. Why would we help one of you, right? And by the way, the Confederacy was illegal because the only confederacies that have ever been legal have been native people who have caused confederacies on Turtle Island. That's the only confederacies that have ever been considered legal in the entire planet. So there is no, so that when they said we're going to be a Confederate source, you got to think about the Roman mentality. We take over the Greeks and we take their gods and stuff and we make them ours. Or we take over the Etruscans and we take what they believe in and we make it ours. We take what the Africans are saying and we change it to what we want it is and we make it ours, and we say we always came up with it and stuff, even though we're perverting all these things we're taking from different people. Well, you have the same thing happening with Americans. Americans are trying to say that they're the natives, right? Remember, the original American was a copper-colored person who's indigenous to America, indigenous to Turtle Island. So a black or copper-colored person was indigenous to America. That's what we were. The only people that they'll show you today when dealing with natives, just to make sure, are either going to be $5 Indians or they're going to be people who are somewhat mixed with Asian, because, by the way, we forget that Asian people that came over here too, a little bit, not to the numbers that we did, but had came over here before. But they're going to show you people like that, and then say, see, those are the natives. And it's like, no, you have a definition of a native. Matter of fact, when you look at conquistadors told you that the natives that they ran into, they were Negroes. That's what they called them. They called them Negroes. And the truth is that a bunch of Negroes, because Negro or Negro, even Negro, is one of the matter of fact, some people consider it to be the most ancient term that Africans use for themselves in West Africa. So when you hear the term Negro, we think Negro. You'll even hear people say so-called Negro. There's no so-called Negro. That's who we are. But if you want to put yourself on paperwork and stuff like that and talk about Black's Law Dictionary, where you might want to say so-called Negro and make sure that you're not known as one, but the reality is you've been a Negro, since the earliest human beings we can go back to and see who wrote things out about themselves. But once again, who's teaching us? It's not our culture. So we get upset if somebody calls us Negro or whatever. Now, I understand somebody outside your culture calling you Negro. They might be calling you Negro with a different type of
hard R.
Right, with a type of attitude or hard R, or just the way they say it is obviously something that they're trying to let you know that they mean that they're boss over you and stuff like that. So I get that. But I'm saying Negro is something that's you. That's something that goes past with somebody else. Oh, thank you, Sister Sharice. Right, that's you. You know, I am a Negro. I'm a West African. You are a Negro, right? If you West African, or heck, if you African, that's about the furthest back we go. And if we're talking about all of us trying to be one diaspora, then why not be Negro? Why not be Negus or Negus? Or Niger or Niger, or, you know, all these different terms that we had. Kush, all these terms, more. All these terms just mean black. Like even when you talk about Ham, where we get the Ham, we're eventually a Ham, where we eventually get, you know, Africa out of. People who are called African are, you know, somewhat, you know, well, mostly, I guess, descendants of Ham. Well, Ham or Ham, his name means hot. And why did they say it was hot? They called him hot because he was dark enough to be able to be in heat. So his name was Ham or Ham. He was really black. So when you're talking about blackness, you're talking about Ham. And Shem is his brother. And Yapet is his brother, even though Yapet, you know, more than likely was a lot lighter, right? Or had some things that became lighter that came through him, right? But you got to recognize and realize those things and have conversation, because we're so busy having conversation through everybody else's culture. We don't even dream of telling other people. We don't even dream of teaching our children this stuff. You know, why does your child, like, your child needs to know that, you know, the word Shem actually means name. So you can't talk about authority or name of anything without coming through Shem. That's just facts. Like, that's the authority that we have. If you come through Shem, it means that you have authority to be able to speak on some things, to name some things, so to speak, to call some stuff out. Now, if you're of Avda or Hebrew, then it tells you straight up, pay attention, Hebrews, that you need to comprehend that that's where Abraham's going to come out of. Right? Why do you got to pay attention to that? Because that's where Isaac is going to come out of, and that's where Jacob and Israel is going to come out of. You know, these are things that we don't think about these things. We've been taught by somebody else that your lineage doesn't matter that much because of this whole Greco-Roman classism thing that says that you got to be on the bottom and that other people have the right and the audacity. Think about this. You know, it's something on the TikTok channel we put out. Think about how crazy this is, that somebody was so busy telling you that you're not an Israelite, and then after telling you you're not an Israelite, made up a whole religion on them being Israelites. And in the meantime of doing it, told you not only you're not an Israelite, but there's no history for you to worry about it. Don't worry about these things. You're not an Israelite. You're not these people. You're nothing. You have no value. All this stuff, right? That Balaam doctrine we were talking about with the Third Assembly, the Assembly of Pergamos, right? This Balaam doctrine that literally somebody made a whole doctrine. And then the Nicolaitans came with it, made that Old Testament, New Testament at the same time. But somebody made a whole doctrine just to be able to attack Israel. And it's talked about in Revelation. It says, it warns us about it. Don't end up being in the same position. And yet here we are, because we don't uphold our own culture. Here we are doing the same stuff. People are giving us doctrine that attacks Israel, and we're sitting there preaching it. Somebody literally told you you're not who you are. Romans. Revelation 2:9 literally says, hey, I know that you think you are poor, but you are really rich. And there are people that say that you are not who you say you are. They say they're the Avda people or the Hebrew people, but reality they're the synagogue of our Satan, because any person who would try to take something sacred like who you are, what your race is, who your people is, what your family is, something that's outside of your control, and try to tell you they're going to use it against you, that's somebody who is doing something satanic. But in Greco-Roman lifestyle, that's what you do. Right? You got to understand, America's not a one-off. They're still under Greco-Roman rule. So in a Greco-Roman lifestyle, oh yeah, somebody, you guys speak Latin and stuff. Yeah, we like that. We're going to speak Latin now. And we're going to say that, real Romans, high up Romans, they need to speak Latin. Or you speak Greek and you guys had gods and this and that or whatever, we like those. We like that language too. We're going to take that too. And we're going to say, hey, instead of Zeus, we're going to say Jupiter. Jupiter's more important than Zeus. Matter of fact, Jupiter is Zeus. Instead of, I forget what the Greek name is, but instead of it being Nike, whatever it is, we're going to say it's Nike now. We're just going to go ahead and take that too. We like that. We're going to take this one, we're going to make it, instead of it being Cupid, we're going to say it's Nike, right? Or I don't know if it's the flip, maybe instead of it being Nike, Cupid, something like that. But we're going to take that and we're going to make it work somehow different. You know, all these different things. We're gonna change this stuff up, and then eventually, what happens? Oh yeah, instead of that being Zeus or Jupiter, how about we just make that the Most High? We'll just make that temple the Most High. So you guys can still worship Jupiter, but you know, just call him God. Call him. Back then, what were they? They would have said Deus, right? That's where you get your deity from and all that. Deus. Call him Deus. And that's why you got to understand culture. God is Germanic. Deus is talking about Greco-Roman stuff. You know, Netzer is talking about Kemet. You know, Elohim is talking about Israel. They're all different people. They're all different cultures. And when you don't know your culture, you get caught up in a lot of stuff. Yeah, Deus. Yeah, I've seen a Deus. I've seen a Deis. And even when people see that, they don't even see it. Like when you talk about Zeus, Zeus. So now somebody says Yesus, right? Or really it would be S-U-E-S or something. But now if you put Yesus, what is that? It really would be I-E-S-U-S or even I-E-S-E-U-S, half man, half Zeus. Like, it's cultural. So when somebody says God bless America and you don't know that these people who are saying this, watch this, are deists. Why are they deists? Because they believe that they can become gods. Right? So when they say God bless America, you think, oh, cool. You know, they're talking about Yahweh. They're talking about Jehovah. They're talking about Yahweh. They're talking about Jesus. No. They're talking about Abraham Lincoln. They're talking about Thomas Jefferson. They're talking about George Washington. They're talking about Teddy Roosevelt. And you know how I know this? When they talk about God bless America, I never thought about this. The Holy Spirit is bringing this to my attention now. Solomon, you need to turn that down, please. Solomon, you need to turn that down. Sorry, excuse me. You know how I know this? I've never thought about this until now. Holy Spirit bringing this to my attention. All my times going down and living in and being even homeless in it one time and just walking around DC all day, every day. For a long period of my life, I can say, in all honesty, that I have never really seen. I'm not saying there's no churches or anything like that, but I can tell you, I've seen a bunch of monuments to presidents and stuff, but I haven't seen a monument. As a matter of fact, I've seen a monument to a goddess, because if you know about the top of the Senate building, that's Columbia. Matter of fact, that same Columbia is the one that's walking around with no, her chest exposed and all that, and blind justice and all that. It's the same person. We don't know that, but it's the same person. God is flying around, and looking over the obelisk and stuff like that. But I haven't really seen this God that's supposed to bless America anywhere. I mean, I've seen the Washington Monument. I've been to that. I've been to the Jefferson Memorial. I've been to Abraham Lincoln's Memorial. I've been to
Jefferson.
I mentioned Jefferson. Roosevelt. Both Roosevelts. I've been to Theodore. I've been to Franklin Delano. I've seen, even though he's a late addition, I've seen Martin Luther King Jr.'s. I've seen, I'm missing somebody that I want to say. I've been to quite a few memorials and stuff like that have to do with presidents.
Isn't that Truman? Or maybe maybe there's a Truman one. I've been to places where they make sure that they honor the dead, but I haven't seen this God that's supposed to bless America anywhere. Wow.
Unless you're talking about Washington, Columbia. That's the only one that I've seen. You got to know about that Washington, Columbia piece, that Kemetic piece that they're trying to retell the story of. But I've been there quite a few times from childhood, and I've seen all these other deists, these deities that now you worship. And when you go there, they're very Greco-Roman in nature, except for the obelisk, which is African or Kemetic, even though they would try to get you to believe that it's Roman. But I've seen, when you look at all those buildings, when you look at all the museums even, they're all Greco-Roman.
Yes. Everything.
They all are going to have the dome. They're going to have paintings on the top.
Pillars.
They're going to have, what did you say?
Pillars.
They're going to have pillars. They're going to have obelisks somewhere around. Sometimes you got to look for them, but they're going to have obelisks. They're going to have gods and goddesses around. They're going to have the little gargoyles and stuff up on top of stuff and everything. Mm-hmm. You're going to see a whole bunch of stuff like that. But I can tell you, I've never seen this God that they keep saying blesses America.
You're right.
Because the gods are the deists. It's the same culture. Like a Roman emperor could become what? A god. Matter of fact,
a few of them after a while, I don't know if it was with Caligula or Nero, but a few of them after a while started just saying, you know what? I am a god on earth. Just treat me as such. And if you say something about me, you're saying something about God, and I'll just kill you. And nobody would say anything until the person finally got so out of whack that they said, hey, I don't care if you're God or not, we're going to kill you, because they couldn't deal with it anymore, right? When Caligula's sitting there, I think it's Caligula, or maybe it's Nero. Nero, who sat there and watched over the fire and then blamed it on Israelites and people that were coming into the belief system of Yahweh and stuff. And literally, some people said as it happened, like he was sitting there either eating, or some people say he was trying to play an instrument or have people playing an instrument for him. Like that's the kind of, Antichrist spirit that still exists today. It's the same culture. That's why we had to talk about it in that manner. We keep trying to have these conversations without culture. American culture is just a continuation of what's been going on from world power to world power to world power. It's been one consistent thing. Why? Because they're all connected to Satan. And once you realize they're all connected to the same person who tried to make himself the deist, right? And he's a deist himself. He wanted to be Elohim and he couldn't do it. What has he done? He's had a whole group of people who have signed up to basically try and do what he does, including the fallen angels. Let's see. We're going to get ready to take our leave soon. Thank you guys for being on. And thank you, babe, for driving. Appreciate it. So I teach my children as I learn, but I see lots of fear in them. What do I do with that? Your boy's the most, you see a lot of fear. I'm not sure 100% what you mean by that. I would say this, that the system is set up to make you afraid to speak out. And one of the things we have to do that's going to eliminate a lot of that is we have to figure out ways to come together. Even if we're not all on the same land, there has to be something we can do, because if you're out there on an island by yourself, you're going to get picked off. That's what Revelation 12 teaches, and that's really just war tactics, right? If you can separate people from where the protection is, where the wall of protection is, the hedge of protection is, of course you can pick people off easily. Divide and conquer, right? So that's one of the things. Also too, though, having them set up in a system, and that's the hard part, is a lot of us are set up where we have to live in the system where children got to go to school. So legit, I'm learning one thing at home, but I got to go into, quote, the real world, right? That's what they call it, the real world, which is really a false world, but they think I got to go into the real world, and in the real world I can't be telling them something that's a lie to them. Like, they're going to tell you George Washington like, for example, every test that they're going to take, George Washington's got to be the first president. Reality is George Washington's the 9th president. Every test that they take, when they say that when the Constitution was written, what was the First Amendment? They're going to say, oh yeah, First Amendment was, freedom of speech and freedom of religion, freedom of press, blah, blah, blah. But the reality is that when the Constitution was written, that didn't exist for 3 more years. Because that was part of the Bill of Rights, and they didn't bring the Bill of Rights into the Constitution. They actually had to wait 3 more years later, having arguments, to finally bring that on. So they didn't care about your freedom of religion, press, all that stuff. That wasn't up in there. But they have to take a test and write that out. So part of it is having a system and a group and land and et cetera in place where we can come together. However that's going to take place. We have people that are helping out with YLP 83, Yah's Land Project 83. And doing things like that, but it's going to, over time, it's got to, we got to really you got to dig in and try to separate at some point, because the whole system's going to be set up to try and get you and I to try and say that we're going to get back on track. They're going to try to get us back on track as far as they want us to do what they want us to do. They want to control us rather than us be in a position that we're supposed to be in. So there's a lot of that stuff. You said Nike is a Greek god of triumph. Yeah, but it should be. It should be fine. I mean, it's the same. Yeah. You said the real monument is Brass Bull outside Wall Street. Okay. Yeah. You said that's an epiphany? Yeah, a lot of people don't know. You said that the funny religious freedom can also be religion on oneself. Yeah. So those are a lot of things that we, just aren't aware of. And it's the same culture, same thing going on. People are doing the same stuff over and over again. It's Norse theology, Thor's Day, Wednesday, Freitas Day or Friday, Greco-Roman stuff, Saturnalia, Saturn Day, Saturday, Sunday, day of sun worship, Monday, day of moon worship, Tuesday, day of worshiping war and blood. Everything that we're speaking is ending up in the same place, ending up in the same thing, the same mindset, the same psychology. And if we don't start studying our own psychology and our own people, and really something that's past something else, like this is very violent nature. They're gonna put up. That's why I even tell people, like, when we talk about black people and all this stuff, and black people will start talking about stuff like I'm God, you're God. We're not, like, God is a Germanic thing. It has nothing to do with you. No, well, that's just how German people say blah, blah. No. All that stuff is attached to culture. Everybody's language that everybody speaks is attached to something. Nobody is randomly saying a word. That's some evolutionary type stuff. And I'm not here to go about and fight people on what they believe evolution to be and all that stuff or whatever. But, that's like some evolutionary type stuff or whatever, right? Evolutionary type belief system. Where, it's like, oh, we lucked up on a language. Or we, like literally people I'm not trying to down people. I'm sorry, it makes me laugh. I'm just being honest with you. Like, when I remember as a child being very confused and just frustrated when I would see them having these cavemen and they would be doing this, ooh stuff. And then they somehow, some way just came across some oohs that sounded like something, so they just randomly said, oh, this ooh means this and that or whatever, right? And it doesn't make, the way that the stuff is explained, like, if you're going to explain to me, you're going to have to explain it better, because a lot of times when somebody hits me with the evolutionary piece, they're usually going to hit me with that Star Wars piece. Long ago and a far away, or what was that? Long ago and another, what was that? Long ago? I can't remember it now, but it always starts with that long ago, far away place, and then does the scroll, whatever. And I'm actually pretty big, or at least was pretty big into Star Wars. I'm surprised I forgot that. Nevertheless, like, it always starts off with that, and that's what you're going to get. Usually if somebody's going to hit me with a lie and something they can't even tell me how to get to it, and they're going to tell me, yeah, this is truth, and they're going to say this happened 100 million years ago, and it's like, but you can't prove to me scientifically what happened 100 million years ago.
Something I noticed about science is that science is like or a lot of scientists practice this religion that they call science, but really is more outlandish than any type of mythology or religion that they claim is backwards, because they'll say, long ago, far away, this happened, and you ask them, so how do you know this happened? Did you see it? No. Were you there? No. Can you repeat it using the scientific method? No. We just believe. We just think. We made a theory. We theorized that this is what happened. So basically, they made something up and then want other people to believe it. And then if you don't believe it and you don't go along with it, they just gaslight you and say you're just too stupid to understand. That's why you don't get it. That's what I noticed about the scientific community. They're basically, it's like the hugest community of narcissists in the world, and they will gaslight you and tell you that you're an idiot because you don't understand their idiotic things that don't make any sense from the beginning.
Mm-hmm. Right, like, even if, that's very, very true, and even if you think about it, when you're talking about, like, that's one thing that people don't want to talk about either, as you're saying, the belief on both sides. They'll tell you you're wrong for your faith, but they have to have faith too. So if both of us are sitting up here based on faith, like, we're not having a conversation as to whether faith, and that's why people get really, they miss a lot of stuff in these supposed arguments that we're supposed to be having. The arguments really aren't great arguments at all, if you can even count them as arguments, because a lot of times it's just somebody say ad hominem, you're wrong because you've got faith. Faith is stupid. It's like, So you don't have to have faith in something that you've never seen happen. Matter of fact, like well, we can go deep into it. We got to take our leave at some point, so I'm not gonna stay on it. But we can stay there for a while. But let me hit some of these, or we can stay there for a while. Let me hit some of this stuff in the comment real quick. They homeschool. Okay, that's great. Yeah, I thought I remembered you saying that they were homeschooled. Can I quickly remember and quickly repeat the info on money? I don't remember exactly what you want me to talk about. Maybe if you can type it up real quick. I read a book about what you are talking about. I forgot the name. It was Freemason. Okay. I don't remember which.
So probably about Colombia and
Colombia and stuff. Okay, yeah. I mean, that stuff that's known. Newbie says you're at work, but trying to get as much knowledge as you can. Well, thanks for being on. Don't get in trouble at work. I know we're way behind, but we're gonna try and upload this stuff. Just haven't had the time to do it. And if there's other comments on here, it looked like there were a bunch more comments, but it's not letting me scroll down. So I apologize. Hopefully it'll let us do so. Oh, here we go. It says Scientology. Scientology is something different, but yeah, Scientology has its own issues and stuff too. It says Scientology actually goes hand in hand with a lot of stuff like Mormonism. Even though they would say it doesn't, but if you study a Scientology, it's basically saying the same thing like Deus. You become a deity yourself, stuff like that. Trap House says science is really just a bunch of theory. They even call some of it theory. Yeah, and that's the thing, is that science shouldn't be theoretic. If it's scientific, then it's not theoretic. Always remember that. If it's scientific, it's not a theory. Does anybody need to use the bathroom? Okay. You got a bunch of amens on you.
Oh, thank you.
Hypothesis-driven and educated guess, right? And by the way, hypothesis is actually scientific. If this, then that, and then you put together controls, go through the process, test it out for a while, and then at the end you give a conclusion. A lot of people do reverse, right? Where they have ideals. An ideal is a narrative. They start with the conclusion. They say this is what the conclusion is. Then they work backwards to try and put together some kind of experiment to be able to get themselves to a place where they can now say, well, if then this, then this, and see, I already did the experiment and I already made the conclusion. A lot of people work backwards. I'm saying.
In terms of science, in order for something to be scientific, it has to be repeatable. Somebody else should be able to take your notes. If you're a scientist and you claim something, you claim a theory.
Okay, that's back. You were saying, sorry guys, you were saying that a scientific thing has to be able to be repeated.
Yeah, any type of scientific theory or discovery, experiment has to be repeatable. If somebody can't take your notes and your observations and repeat whatever experiments you've done and have the same results as you, then it's considered unscientific. So all these theories of evolution or relativity, all these things that they've come up with are just, hope, wishes, and prayers to themselves, basically.
Yeah. And that's reality. A lot of people don't want to have that conversation, but that's reality. If you can't repeat it, then it's not scientific. And repeatable, able to repeat. So if you're unable to repeat it, then by definition it can't be scientific. And yeah, people will have. So you can have theories, but at the end of the theory, when people say scientific theory, like technically, you can't have a scientific theory because in order for it to be scientific, it has to be repeatable. If it's a theory, it hasn't even been done. It's just being thought that it could be done. Right, so that's why once again, when people talk about neutrons, neutrinos, things like that, when people hit me with that, you see how many times since we've been doing the Revelation series, people remember I was telling you guys about neutrons and neutrinos and how it's going to come up, and we got into the Revelation series. Everybody's been like, well, yeah, 666, proton, neutron, electron. With that, neutrons is a theory. Neutrons are not scientific because nobody's ever seen a neutron, and they can't. Therefore, not only have they not been able to repeat how neutrons or neutrinos come to be, they still don't know what they're talking about with it, or even how to say if it's real or not. Yes. Even people that would argue if a neutrino was real still can't show you and provide proof of a neutron. even people who are trying to tell you that a neutrino is real, which they're literally spending millions and millions of dollars every year to be able to do so. They have a pool that set up where it has water that's supposed to be purer than any water that exists on the planet. Which you would think that'd be nice if they had a pool that size, this huge size, they would actually let people drink it. But nevertheless, they're supposed to have this water that's in this pool that's purer than anything that's ever existed. Huge pool. Like, I mean, I can't remember what I want to say. It's like several stories, like maybe tens of stories. I think it goes underground quite a ways, and they use it to try and shoot these signals that they're hoping will prove neutrinos. And but they can't do it, so it's not scientific. So, but your child will go to school, and you and I went to school, and we learned about neutrons, and some of you probably learned about neutrinos. And both of them, I remember my wife and I, I think it was for my born day. On October 6th, and we were watching it in the hotel room. And I said, "This is crazy." Like I said, this is gonna blow my mind that I've thought that neutrons are an actual thing my entire life. And come to find out that not only are they not an actual thing, but they're a theory. Nobody's seen one, and like people have tried to make up a whole nother theory now. Since they couldn't prove the first theory, they had to make a theory for the theory. But that's what we're in, and people call that scientific. And they'll say that you and I are wrong for having faith in Yahweh and having faith that the universe, which literally means a spoken sentence, that Yahweh would speak the universe, which means spoken sentence. So you can't have a universe without somebody speaking it into existence. And they say we're wrong for that, but then they'll tell you that they can't prove something, and even though it's not scientific, just have faith that it's scientific, right? I'm just saying religious wise, because that you're dealing with two religions. When we use that term religion, you're dealing with religion. So religious wise, whose religion makes more sense? Like it just makes more sense. Like I said, being a child, and literally, what was I saying? Being a child. Oh yeah, I'm talking about the caveman stuff and all that stuff. It never made sense to me that you would just have lucked up on the language. That whole thing, like we just leave people around each other long enough for generations, and they change, and the language is going to change this and that or whatever. If anything, and here's the opposite. I'm going to get ready to take my leave after this because I know we've been on a lot longer than what we normally are on the evenings, but it's kind of a makeup session. And I'm kind of resting a little bit too before I get back on the road, so y'all continue to pray for us as we travel. I want you to think about this. Here's the deal, because we're trying to get back to Eden, to perfection, right? We're trying to get back to Eden, trying to get back to perfection, right? If we're trying to get back to Eden, and we're trying to get back to perfection, you must comprehend all the stuff that we're going back to now, and all the stuff we're learning about, and people talking about holistic medicine and all this stuff. It's stuff that's been around since the beginning, and we simply just went away from what was perfect. Eating habits that we had, eating food that was great for our bodies, not having things that kill us or make our heart rate go too fast or things like that. We had all this stuff in order already, right? And we didn't stick with it. So now here we are going through a lot of different things and dealing with a lot that we should have never really had to deal with, right? We're trying to get back to salvaging ourselves, a place of being salvaged and getting back to the original intent. And so what's starting to happen is everything that Yahweh's word has said from the beginning, everything that was in our culture from the beginning, if you notice, all that's been happening is people have been verifying what the word has said, right? The further back the further we live now, the more we're living out, the more stuff they're talking about natural and all this stuff or whatever, and the nature of things and all this. We're learning that stuff that is natural is what we should be learning about, natural law. We're learning that you should have witnesses and affidavits and stuff. That's biblical law. That's kingdom law. We're learning how to make sure that we comprehend truth and that we seek truth and that we seek the greatness within ourselves, things like that, right? That's biblical. We're learning that you can think something, right, or think and internalize something spiritually, and it manifests into a disease physically. That's what the Bible's been talking about. We're learning everything we learn. We're learning about marriage. Marriage is a huge deal for our people. We need to get back to being married, and once we learn how to be husbands and wives again, this Willie Lynch syndrome is broken, right? We're going back to the beginning, to the basics. Learning that there was an alphabet before there was an alphabet. Learning that chemistry, you have to talk about chemistry. If you don't talk about chemi or melanin, then you're not talking about anything of value scientifically. Like, those are things that have always been there. And we're going right back to it. We have other people of other groups who are trying to kick us out of melanin conferences. And so we've had to make sure we have our own. Like, where they do that at? Right. Once again, we're going to take melanin out of you. We're going to study it, but we're not going to allow the people that we got the melanin from to learn about themselves. So once again, if there's self-control and you don't know about self, all that's left is what? Control. And the people who engineer the food, comprehend what I'm about to say. If people are engineering your food, do you think that they would not engineer it to hurt people who are melanated? And I'm not off on that. Do some research. Do you not think, like think about it. If you take a drug, if you take a pill, a prescription pill, or over-the-counter drug, right? Drugs don't even get counted, or the effectiveness of the drug is measured by how it affects melanin. So that means if the drug doesn't mess melanin up, then it's not really effective. So somebody with less melanin could take something and it's still gonna hurt them, but it's not gonna hurt them anywhere close to what somebody with more melanin who takes it, because they're affecting you more. Now, maybe you can last through some of the stuff longer too, but it's gonna hurt. It's designed to hurt your melanin. So it could be either side. It could be I don't want to say catch-22 necessarily, but it could work on either side. But either way, it's going to ultimately lead to destruction. So anytime somebody tampers with any kind of thing, medication-wise, it gives you a part of a herb, which is all these medications are. And what's going to happen to your body? Your body is going to have melanin attacked. Plain and simple. That's what side effects are. Side effects is your melanin is messed up. That's what your side effects are. Your side effects are your melanin is jacked up. That's what the side effect is. Now, a lot of us don't think about it that way, but that's what your side effect is. Your side effect is your melanin is messed up. And if your melanin gets messed up, guess what? That's going to be an attack on pineal gland. Right? And if the pineal gland gets messed up, guess what? Then that means that you don't have melanin flow. You can deal with calcified pineal gland. Pineal gland, all those things. Like, that's stuff that's there, that's happening to you. And you got to be aware of those things. That's somebody else's culture to take something and attack you with it, and then turn around and gaslight you once they do and say, hey, you need to get this together. And if you got your stuff together, and if you guys would get, but you got this stuff set up where my children are living in food deserts, and you don't want them to eat anything that's natural. But you're going to tell me that child is going to have problems with ADHD. You daggone right. You'll give them bread, and was filled with sugar, and not even real bread at that, not even real wheat. And you'll give them, you'll make sure that there's a Subway. Have you ever thought about that? Like, Subways are in the hood.
Wow.
Like, they won't let fine dining in the hood, but Subways are always in the hood. We think about McDonald's and KFC and all that. Subway's always, you know why? Because that's Subway bread. If you were to go to Ireland and you were to try and eat Subway bread, they tell you that you can't even have Subway bread. It's too sweet. They tax it. They have an extreme tax on what you normally eat as Subway bread, because it messes people up. But they let it in the hood, don't they? I've gone to hoods all over the country. Gone to hoods where you go to a Subway and they'll have the Subway set up, and it's got the the plexiglass or the bulletproof glass and everything. Like, you can, same way that you do if you go into the Chinese joint and all that stuff. And all these other people will be working from other cultures, won't they? It's not your people that are making money off of you. So they'll protect themselves and they'll feed you stuff, but they ain't gonna eat it themselves. People at the Chinese restaurant, they eat Chinese food, but they don't eat the Chinese food that's on the menu. You got to ask them for the Chinese food. Like, you got to know what they're eating to be able to say, oh, no, don't give me the stuff that you want me to have. Don't give me the fried chicken, blah, blah, blah. Give me the vegetables. Give me the shoots. Give me the roots.
So's chicken,
right.
They made up for Americans.
Yeah, they made up General So's chicken and orange chicken and all these different things. Orange chicken used to be my thing. I'm not going to hold you, right? But, no, not just orange chicken. I'm thinking of sweet and sour chicken, which is even worse. And it's nothing of value in that. You can tell when you're eating it, nothing of value, but it has hits all the pleasure centers in your mind. The reality, though, is that it's coming from a culture. It's coming from a culture. Yeah, Wendy's, KFC. Yeah, those are the ones that we expect. Those are the ones that we expect. So those are the ones that we expect. We expect to see McDonald's in the hood and stuff, but we don't think about, Subway's in the hood. Why would they let Subway in the hood? Right? They won't let you have a Whole Foods in the hood. Right? Even though Whole Foods ain't necessarily the greatest all the time either. But they won't let you have a Sprouts in the hood. They're not going to give you the nice mom pop corner store where people bring you, real fruits and veggies and stuff like that. They're not going to have that in the hood. But they will make sure that you got a Subway in there. You got to start thinking about why. Right? Like, they'll give you, you got gas stations in the hood. Some people, because of food deserts and stuff, it's unfortunately cheaper for them to buy stuff from the gas station because it costs them money to have to go on a train and then a bus and do all this stuff to be able to get to a place, and then they can't even buy that many groceries anyways, because they can only hold what they can carry back, and then or push back on their push cart or whatever, and then they take it back to the house. So, there's a lot of times where people aren't even eating what they need to just because of that, right? But so a lot of people go into the gas stations. What's at the gas station of any value nutritional, right? Like nothing. But there's some people whose families are eating out of either corner stores that are always going to be what? Going to be Indian families, Pakistani families, Chinese families. Not trying to say these people are all evil. I'm just trying to tell you the game. And I've gone in some gas stations and stuff, and I'll look at the stuff, and I'll just be talking to the person sometimes, and they'll be surprised that I'll ask about something nutritionally, this and that, and they'll be like, they might actually have something, and I'll just say, why you guys sell this stuff? Like, I was like, I've asked a couple of them, do you eat this? And they'll smile. One woman was honest with me. She's like, no, I would never eat this stuff. And I was like, why do you sell it? There was another guy, he's a Muslim. So supposedly, because not everybody's faithful, but supposedly he looked like it though. He looked like he's somebody who's Muslim, upholds everything, but he's got a liquor store in the hood. And so I was like, would you drink this stuff? He was like, no, I'm Muslim, blah, blah. I was like, why did you sell it to other people then? I was like, is that part of your jihad? Is that part of your your promise to make sure that you uphold the community? But it's because they don't care about you. Got to care about yourself. It's the same spirit is what I'm trying to get to. You got to be careful about this culture. This culture thing is what messes us up. That being said, though, I know I missed a few comments. I'm gonna go ahead and get ready to take my leave. I'm gonna see if I missed anything big on here. I apologize. Let's see. It's strange how science was considered witchcraft, but now these scientists consider faith as ignorance. Yeah, most definitely. The sub shop who was busy every day was. I missed the first part of what you were saying, Sister Sonia. Hold on. You said true. Some neighborhoods will not let it's fast food. Yeah, and some neighborhoods don't, and shouldn't, by the way, especially if it's not your culture. And it even goes down to this. You said what? Subway, Dollar General, Family Dollar, Zero Nutrition. Yep, and a lot of food they sell, most definitely. You said banana and apple and water. Yeah, sometimes they do have bananas and apples. The water, though, even too, you got to look at the water. Yeah. If you're getting the Dasani water, it says you got to get in the
plastic water that's been sitting in the sun.
Plastic water sitting in the sun, or even, they got Dasani water. Dasani water, it's got the drying agent that dries out your body if you are basically like about to be funeralized, embalmed. They have embalming fluid basically inside, the water, which means that they're trying to dry you out so you go back for the same Dasani water, but then they also have other stuff in there that'll make you crave it. So you have to be in position to think about those things, but once again, it's about culture, right? And as I get ready to take my leave, I'll leave you with this. I apologize if I don't get to anything else for you guys, but I'll leave you with this. You have to be in position to where you recognize, you think about, you comprehend, you understand that culture has to be in everything, even down to what's on your plate. And I believe it's Dr. Leah Africa who first said it in a way that I saw it like this. He said that when you go to a Chinese home, he said you see culture on their plate. He said you're going to see China on the plate. He said that's when you walk in a Chinese home, you're going to see China. You're going to see chopsticks. Possibly you're going to make sure that you see certain vegetables that you don't see anywhere else. You're going to have a certain smell. You're going to have the food will be, if it's fried in a certain way. Sauces will be different. It might not be ketchup and mustard. It might be soy sauce and other things, right? But you're going to see China represented on the plate. And he said if you go to an Indian family, you're going to see stuff. You're going to see different types of bread and things that could be used to scoop things up or whatever. You're going to see things like that. If you go to an Ethiopian place, you're going to see injera and things like that to be able to pick up your food and stuff that's cooked on top of it and all those type of things or whatever. If you go to Mexico, right, you're going to see Mexico on the plate. You go to a Mexican home, you're going to see Mexico on the plate. Right. If the list goes on and on. If you go to Ireland, you're going to see Ireland on the plate. Right. You might see some stuff. Is haggis Irish or Scottish?
Yes.
So right, Irish. So you're going to see haggis and stuff on the plate. You'll see a lot of different things in a lot of different places. If you go to England, we would consider it to be disgusting or whatever, but you might see fish and chips, and that's going to be on the plate. If you go to New York and you go outside and you see them dogs out there, them hot dogs and them links and all that stuff, like they're going to have it done in a specific way, right? If you see pizza out there, you're going to see this is New York style. If you go to Chicago, this is going to be Chicago deep dish or Chicago style rather. I don't even know if deep dish started in Chicago now. I think it did. But nevertheless, like if you go to Cali, they're going to say this is California pizza, and you're going to know exactly what California pizza is. If you go to Hawaii, they're going to say this is Hawaiian pizza. You think Hawaiian pizza just means put some pineapple on it. Go to Hawaii and see how they make pizza. It's a different experience. If you go to Hawaii, you go to McDonald's, you're going to see a different experience. They're going to have spam on the menu, right? Like you don't get spam on the menu in America, in the regular state, but you go over, and I guess in California as well. Okay, that's fine. I'm almost finished. Oh, what? Oh, I'm fine.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm fine. Unless you wanted to switch.
No.
We can switch it to the next one. It's up to you. But yeah, so what? All that being said, it's about culture being on the plate, right? All that being said, it's about culture being on everything, even down to the plate that you're eating off of, right? And you should have culture on your plate. You should be able to have some jollof on your plate, right? That's you. That's your people.
Cornbread.
You should, cornbread, if you're going to have that on your plate, you all right?
Yes.
So those that want the yucca plant, you can have that on your plate. Those of you who want sweet potato, you can have that on your plate. Those who are looking for, turnip greens and things like that, that's stuff that you can put on your plate. Like, that's your culture. You should have something that's culturally accurate for you.
Dandelions is our culture too.
Dandelion, that's your culture, right? You can have that on your plate. And it comes down to your plate. Once again, other people's culture has been put on there, and we are about Greco-Roman stuff now. Question for you, and this is just an honest question as we get ready to take our leave. Like, I know I keep saying that, I don't want to keep doing I'm trying to close thing, but I just want to make sure as we close out that you have this salah moment with you, especially to make up since we didn't have the last 2 days as well. I want you to have the salah moment with me real quick. Okay, you ready? All right. If big if here, right? If we are in a position, all right, I need you to get this. I need you to get this. If we are designed differently, or if you want to say mutated or genetically different, whatever, right? We've gone away from the original intent, original design, right? But if we are different beings than someone else, should we not eat different than someone else? Right? It's a very natural progression, as you can see, right? I'm not talking about something that's extremely hard, because people will think, oh, this is racist. No. If two people have different blood types, should they not eat differently? Right? Slightly, at least. If one person has melanin with selenium in the center, and somebody else has melanin with sulfur in the middle, should they not eat differently? Right? If somebody, I don't know, if somebody is a man or a woman, are there certain things that they should eat a little different? Now, obviously, foods usually will kind of help each other in reproductive system, but a man doesn't need the same amount of iron as a woman might need. Right? Matter of fact, exactly. If you go and get iron pills, They don't really do male. If you notice, you haven't really seen male iron pills. If you do, you need to run away from that product, right? But you don't really see male iron pills unless there's men out there that are anemic because men don't really get nutrition they need anymore either. But men should not really need iron, definitely not on the level that a woman would need, right? So we should eat different, down to the plate. So the same thing, if you have a people that are different than some other people, see, this is when people say, oh, you're right. No, this is common sense. If you have a people that are different than other people, should they not eat different? I'm not trying to say go to the place where some people even say we straight up different species. I'm not trying to say you got a lamb and a lamb eats differently than a lion. No, I'm saying that you have people who are eat different and need different things, by the way. Like, by the way, even when you talk about things like racism and classism, things like that, you know, if you eat certain foods, it tends to make you think in those levels, right? So people who don't have stuff like selenium in their diet, who aren't getting enough turmeric in their diet, who aren't getting enough iron in their diet, who aren't getting enough a lot of things like that, they will start to have schizophrenic behavior, which means that things that we might think is just straight up racist or classist, it might be because they're not eating food that they need to eat. Like, people don't think about stuff like that, right? But you can literally self-medicate. We can medicate some of this stuff out if people were honest about the fact that, like, yeah, you keep talking about like racism and stuff over there. Like, what are you eating? What are you eating that causes? What have your ancestors been eating, right? And passing down generation to generation. And what has caused you as a child? What is causing your pineal gland to be calcified? What is it that you're eating that actually causes you to think that you need to take on somebody else's culture and say that I'll just take whatever I feel like it, and then the rest of it I'll act like didn't happen at all, and I'll even pervert what I have to be able to just always be about myself? That's an eating habit. A lot of people don't think about that part. Like, so there's a lot of people, my wife can help me out with this because I always mess this up, but like if people are eating like a lot of fat and stuff, usually it's because they don't feel loved. Right?
A lot of sugar.
A lot of sugar. So like if you're eating a lot of sugar, somebody doesn't feel love. So
fat is for protection.
And fat is for protection, right? So I need to deal with the fact that you don't feel love spiritually, number one. But then also when we start trying to get you to eat, right? So you're not going to stop eating fat basically until you feel loved. You're not even going to think that there's a need for you to stop eating fat. Like a lot of people get to a place where an intervention has to happen, right? So when you get to these people that are like 500, 600, 700, 800 pounds and stuff, and the intervention has to happen, and what starts happening? The family starts saying, hey, we want you to be around. What are they saying? We love you. And the person hears it and says, okay, I'm going to try, right? And so I'm going to try and stop. For the first time, I'm going to start saying to myself, I don't need to eat the fat. I don't need to eat the fat anymore. I need to get rid of the fat. And I don't need the fat to feel loved, excuse me, because I'm getting the love through my family now, right? So I'm sorry, I don't even need to eat the sugar, excuse me. That's causing the fat to be stored. Because the body sees and goes, oh, okay, well, like, let's store this for later. Let's store this for later. Let's store this for later. And eventually your body's like, you have so much stored, now you got a problem.
Fat is for protection. You notice how sometimes when someone has trauma, like especially like childhood trauma or sexual abuse, they might put on a lot of weight as a child or as an adult. And then as soon as they start dealing with the trauma and going through counseling or whatever, they start to instantly start to lose the weight because they don't need that protection.
Mm-hmm. You know what's interesting? A lot of people in the military who wanted to get out and couldn't stand being in, they gained weight. As soon as they got out and you see them again, they were skinny. Because, they felt like they needed protection. They didn't really want to be around. So it's like, it's the same thing culturally. What's on your plate? We don't think about food culturally. We're going off of somebody else's stuff. Oh, wake up in the morning, somebody told you, you need this many eggs, you need this much milk, you need this much cereal, and they lied to you about a food pyramid, and now you're sitting up there realizing that you should have never had milk, and you should, you didn't need like, matter of fact, there's really no such thing as breakfast food. You can eat whatever you want, whenever you want. I'm not saying please make sure it's healthy, but you get what I'm saying, right? You can eat meat if you want. You can eat a steak in the morning if you want it. Like, you don't have to wait till dinner time to have a steak. But you were taught that that's dinner food. Well, why is it dinner food? Breakfast literally just means I'm breaking my fast. You can break your fast with whatever. You can break your fast with, if you're vegan, you don't have to make vegan food that Matter of fact, vegans don't really worry about that, I guess. You can kind of eat whatever you want, whenever you want, but that should be the idea for everybody. But we're off on that. We don't think about things that way. And we should have culture and everything, including on our plate. So people will get mad and they'll say, you're a reverse racist and blah, blah, and how dare you? It's like, no, like this is common sense stuff. Look, I'm 6'5.5" black man. I probably shouldn't be eating the same as a 4'5" white man. It's not me trying to say I'm better or worse. Like, they shouldn't be eating what I'm eating. Maybe there's some things that we both should have, sure, but there's some things that would be better for his diet than it would be, but that wouldn't be so great for mine. Matter of fact, we definitely shouldn't be eating the same amount, right? Like, it's just, this is stuff that's just very sensical, but they'll tell you it's nonsensical because they want you to believe that I'm the person that's racist, whatever that means. So. But anyways, though, thank you all for being on. We appreciate you all. We spent a lot of extra time on. We normally aren't on this. This is like probably twice as long as our longest sessions are on the evening sessions. However, we are making up for Monday and Tuesday. So prayerfully, we'll be back on track for tomorrow. I'll be resting, but I will try resting tomorrow, and so will my family. But I'll be trying my best to make sure I'm on for the lives tomorrow in the rising and in the evening. Thank you for being on and listening with us. We thank you for going down this, I don't even know what we'll call this when we post this, but observing culture. I guess we're talking about Greco-Roman culture. That's kind of what got us into this. And thank you so much for being on. We appreciate you. We'll be back on tomorrow, 8 a.m. Eastern New York time. If you need to catch what we're doing and how to help us with what we're doing, look in the bio on TikTok. Look in the website where the link tree is, and you'll be able to figure out what's going on with there. We got classes coming up January 31st. That stuff is on the website. We're going to have our meeting, our weekly meeting again coming up on Shabbat, and also we're going to have our first meeting this Shabbat with everybody concerning YLP 83 and getting into some deeper things. So everybody feel free to join for that. We thank you. We appreciate you. We honor the King and Queen in each and every one of you. Continue to pray for us as we're on the road. We plan on being at our destination in the rising, early in the rising. Thank you all for being on.
Yes,
oh, okay, no problem. So we appreciate you. We thank you once again. We give all honor to the Most High. We give honor to Him for my wife, the Honorable Maya, who lives a life that's able to be honored. You can check her out on TikTok, YouTube, her website, and Pinterest at Bloom and Flourish, not A and D, but the letter N, Bloom and Flourish. And thank you so much. We appreciate you. As always, it's been Pastor Kofi, Pastor Servant to Christ, where we are always changing lives one mind at a time by being a voice of the voiceless and speaking the unspoken until we have the next time and privilege and opportunity and responsibility of being in front of you all again. Please remember, as always, that you are loved, you are necessary, you are majestic, you are fearfully and wonderfully made in you, which is all of us working together. Will be the reason why people who are in this system no longer have to be of it. Shalom, family. And prayerfully, we'll talk to you tomorrow on the rise. Thank you so much for the love, y'all. Talk to you in a little bit. Peace.